Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to do some cottage style decor, and we're going to start with this tray that I thrifted. This at one time was a popular look. I don't feel like it is now, so I painted this in the color sea glass. I painted 2 coats on it after I gave it a good cleaning, and now I'm using this transfer from Redesign. And I'll link this one in the description. But this is the color that I wanted to work with, and I thought that this rose transfer would look really pretty with this sea glass. So I'm cutting as much of this away as possible so that it's easier to maneuver, because it's going to not only fit on the flat part of the bottom of this tray, but it's also going to come up the ends just a little bit. So this, I felt like this would make it easier to transfer. I had a viewer who asked for some more cottage decor, so that was my inspiration for this. And then I usually just start with one piece and decide what I want to add to that, and this tray was the first thing that I thought of. Now, generally, I would seal my item first because you have less of a chance of the transfer pulling your paint away. But this one had dried overnight, so I felt pretty safe transferring it straight to the paint. And it worked out just fine. So once I got this transferred on, then I gave this 1 coat of a polyacrylic. And that was a Minwax polyacrylic. Now you could use any kind of sealer that you want, but that's just what I chose to use here. But before I did that, I used my black ink pad and the Stays On ink, and sometimes I'll do that. This one had all that yellow underneath, and I knew it would distress down to that, so I just thought it best to just run my stamp pad over some of the high spots and make it look distressed that way. And I also forgot that I added some script stamped to this, and I'm just using the script one from the set I See Paris, which is a Redesign set. It's just a good size for script, I think, and so I just kind of put it randomly on the front of this. And then once I did my fake distressing on it, then that's when I added my clear coat. Now this could be used on the wall, but you would have to add some sort of a hanger to it. This one doesn't have. It's meant to be a tray, I guess. So I'm using it, showing it here on a plate rack or a plate stand. So now the next item that I'm going to make over is this little picture. I'm just going to, I put some slick stick on this to keep, to help it stick to the glass, but I wouldn't have had to, because as it turns out, it was days later before I ended up painting this. So if you just paint 1 coat and let it dry even overnight, then it'll stick a lot better, and then when you go to do something else to it, you won't have to worry about it pulling your paint off. This slick stick keeps that from happening, though. So I end up putting 2 coats of the color sea glass on this, and then I let it dry again overnight. And because I let it dry overnight, then I was able to put my transfer on this one like I did the other one without having to do my clear coat first. And that's good, because with the transfer that I'm using on this, it's one that I've been using on several projects lately. But it has like a shiny finish to it, and I don't like that shiny finish. So I like to spray paint a matte spray on it. And that was suggested to me by a viewer, and it's been great. I was trying to sand all that shiny finish off, which wasn't always successful. But if you spray a matte clear coat over the top, then that dulls that shininess, and then you don't have to go through all that sanding. So this gets 2 coats of the color sea glass. I'll let that dry well, and then again, I let it dry overnight so that I could put my transfer on without clear coating it first. And then I put one of those transfers on it from, I'll add that in the description. It's just some transfers that I've been using for some time. I can't remember what the name of them are, but I will look them up and add them in the description. But I've gotten an incredible amount of projects out of those, and they're not very expensive at all. I will say that they're a little stiffer than the average transfer. So on items like this where it's rounder, you just have to be really careful and make sure you get good contact. But overall, I've been happy with this transfer because it does a lot of small projects. And once I figured out, or someone else figured out for me, how to get past that shiny finish, then they're perfect for me. So once this one gets sealed with a top coat and that shiny finish is gone, then that's all that I did to this one. Now, I thrifted this newer sifter. I don't want it to look new, but I'm also not going to leave it just this finish. So what I did was I just spray painted it with a dark spray paint and let that dry. And then I'm still going to paint it, but I want the inside to be dark so that it doesn't look so new. So I'm giving this one 2 coats of the color Buttercream. And then once this dries, I'm going to finish it off with some of the script stamps and some of those same transfers. And then I painted that little wooden handle with that moss color that I mixed up in my last video. And then obviously this got a clear coat on the whole thing. And now I've seen people redo these little sugar shakers that you get from the Dollar Tree. So I picked up a couple of these, and I'm going to give these 2 coats of the color. Actually, I used the color soft pink, and then I added a little bit of buttercream to it to soften it more and to warm that color up a little more. And then I give these 2 coats, the lid and the glass part, but I do end up going back over the lids with that moss color. I just felt like it was too much of the pink to leave them pink. So I'm going to use the script stamp on these, and I'll put the script on the bottom of one and on the top of the other one, and then I'll use some more of those little rose transfers on these. And then once I repaint these lids in the color moss and give these a good clear coat, then these were finished. And I just love how these turned out. And these can even be used to store yarn or jute twine or something like that in and let it feed out that sugar hole. So I think these are very versatile. Now I thrifted this clock, and it's just a little cheap clock. But I'm just going to paint it, and I'm not going to worry with, I thought about adding some transfers to this, but I just decided because this is small, I just want to keep it plain. So I'm going to give this 2 coats of the color Buttercream, and then I'll do some pretty good distressing on it with sandpaper once it's dry, and finish it off with a clear coat, and that's all that I do to this one. And I'm using the Dollar Tree sandpaper here. I don't recommend it at all. I just have it, and but their sandpaper I find is very, very cheap, and obviously you're not paying much for it, so I'm not surprised. But one use will usually just kind of make it fall apart like it is here. So it's a one project to use if it even gets through a whole project. But again, I'm using it because I already have it. And now I feel like this updated this little clock and also made it versatile. And now the next items that I'm going to make over are a few little bottles that I had thrifted. And they had already been painted, so that's a plus because now I don't have to do any kind of a slick stick on them. They're already going to have a good base to paint. But I don't want these colors, so I'm going to use the color sea glass on 2 of these and then the color Buttercream on the other. So I decided to do the sea glass on this one that's already blue because I know I would get good coverage. But as it turns out, all of these covered well with just one coat. And then because these have a raised design on them, I ended up having to do a clay mold on them. Those transfers wouldn't have covered that well. And so I have a clay mold that is, I think it might be called a cameo mold. But this is one that is one of those cake decorating molds. So they're very plentiful on Amazon. You can just look up cameo mold and you'll find any number of these, and they're not very expensive at all. So I'm just going to do the larger one and just glue that to the front of each of these. I'm using the DAS clay. That's just what I prefer, but you can use any kind. And put some cornstarch in that mold, and then I'll make that larger mold for each of these, and then I'll glue it on with Titebond and then let that dry well. But before I let that dry, I was able to take some buttercream paint and just kind of brush over the top of that just to get rid of some of that clay color and make this look more like it's actually this buttercream color. I didn't get full coverage, and I didn't mind that I didn't get full coverage because once I let this dry, I'm going to use some of the Dixie Belle Temptress, the color Temptress gel stain, and just let it get all down in all that detail, and then wipe all the excess off. And then I can go back over this very lightly with the buttercream, and then you'll see all that blue just in the detail, but the top will still be this buttercream. And I just had to be careful not to get it on the blue or on the buttercream colored bottle, and then all of these will get a clear top coat. And now, as promised, I'm going to show you how I did the bed spring nest. So I did one in the other video, didn't get to film that. So I'll show you that one again, but I'm just going to make a new one. So I am putting some Spanish moss. I'm using both the light green and the browner color, and just kind of mixing those together because I like the look of mixing those together. And then because a viewer told me how to do this, it's been very, very helpful in making nests. And so I'm just squirting some glue down in a baggie. So I put enough for my nest in a baggie, and then I'm just going to squirt quite a bit of glue down in. I didn't measure it. I just squirted some in and then just kind of moved that around and squirted some in again and moved that around until I felt like I had all of the moss moist. And then I just kept molding it in my hands until I got it the shape that I wanted it. And then because I know that birds just use whatever they can find to make their nest, I wanted to put some little scraps of fabric and lace down in that as well, and just kind of give it a little bit better look. Now, a small bowl is perfect for this, whatever size bowl that you want your nest to be. But I couldn't find one that I wanted, so I'm using the bottom of a little candlestick. And now I took some little thin twigs, and I'm just kind of working those into this because nests usually have some little twigs sticking out of them. So at this point, you're just going to create, and you're just going to keep adding things until you like the look that you get. But I just went outside and gathered some little things and to stick in there, because I don't like to make a nest with just Spanish moss. I just don't feel like it looks realistic enough. And then once you get this looking the way you want it, then you're just going to let it set and dry. I let mine set for maybe 30 minutes to an hour just to make it dry enough, stiff enough, so that when I put it on my bed spring, it will glue down. You may want to let it dry a little bit longer than that. And now I'm taking some little foam eggs and I'm going to decoupage those to go inside this. Now you can just leave them white like this. These have been painted, and I just sprinkled some little specks of paint on them. But I want this to be a little more decorative, so I'm taking this decoupage paper and just tearing out some of these little yellow roses. And then I'm just going to decoupage them here and there on the egg. You can't really do a solid decoupage on these eggs because it just would wrinkle up too much. There's just too much excess here, and you're better off just tearing out little parts and covering that way. You don't have to cover the whole thing. You could, but I just like to put some little designs here and there on it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to decoupage these on, and I'm just using regular Elmer school glue. So I just decoupage these on until I feel like these have enough on each side. And then once those dry, then I'll glue those down inside the nest. And then with just some hot glue, and then I'll hot glue my nest onto the top of my bed spring. Now these nests will dry pretty stiff depending on how much glue you put in them. And even if you use the white Elmer school glue, it's going to dry clear. It's just that I just happen to have this clear glue handy, and that's what I end up using. Again, these could just be painted depending on the look that you're going for, or if you can find them where they're already ready, then obviously you can use any eggs you want on this. And as you can see, I'm not being very careful as far as being exact in tearing out my roses. I'm just kind of going for a look. And obviously you don't want to try to use transfers on here, even if you could find some small enough, because these you're going to have to put some pressure on transfers, and these foam eggs won't handle that well. So once these dry, just glue them inside my nest, and these here are not quite dry. I'm just kind of showing you. But once they dry, I glue them inside the nest, and then glue that nest on top of the bed spring. And then you can just glue some little blooms in it, or just anything that you want to add into it. I just cut a few little blooms off of a pick and put those in there and glued those in. And that's all that I did to the nest. And then I just took some scraps of the color of ribbon that I wanted to use, or the color of lace, and just kind of tied a bow around the top of that. And then once I got that tied on, then I just took one of my hang tags. I have some hang tags that we did with some birds on them. So I just took one of my bird hang tags and tied that just underneath that bow. And then that's all that I did to the bed spring before I glued on that nest. So these are very, very simple to make, and you can make them as simple or as detailed as you want. And I think that while they're very good little spring decor pieces, they can also be used on into the summer, and you could add some snow to your nest and make these even winter decor. Now for a lot of these hang tags, my sister and I find just bits of clip art in old books and cut those out. So a lot of these birds are from some books that her school had retired. They had just been through so much that they were getting rid of them, and she got a lot of the clip art out of those. But I absolutely love how these turn out, and I just love the decor where you can bring nature in, and I feel like it goes so well for spring. And for those of you who don't have bed springs, I know that's not something that most of you just have lying around. This could be done on top of a candlestick as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.